You don't even need to open the message. The moment their name pops up on your phone, there's this tiny drop in your chest. Not panic, not anger, just wait. Because you already know what the conversation is going to be. Something went wrong. Someone did them dirty. Life, again, has refused to cooperate. And you're going to listen. You're going to say the right things. And none of it is going to matter. Because tomorrow, there will be something else. There always is. Here's what you've told yourself. They're just going through a hard time. Maybe. But hard times end. This doesn't. You've watched the story change. The job, the relationship, the friend group, the city. But the theme never does. Something is always wrong. Someone is always to blame. And they are always, somehow, at the center of it. That's not bad luck. That's a pattern. And patterns aren't accidents. Complaining feels like sharing. That's why it works. When someone vents to you, it feels intimate, like trust. Like they chose you because you're safe. And you respond like that's what it is. But here's what's actually happening. Every time you listen, validate, and reassure, you become more useful to them. Not more loved, more useful. They don't come to you because they value you. They come because you respond. That's not connection. That's function. You've become the place where their emotions go to get managed, and you volunteered for the role without reading the contract. Chronic complainers don't want solutions. You've probably figured that out by now. You've offered solutions, carefully, thoughtfully. You laid out options, talked through steps, maybe even helped directly. And it went nowhere, because the complaint was never about the problem. The complaint is the product. It's what gets them the thing they actually need, which is your sustained, uninterrupted attention. Offer a solution and you're trying to end the exchange. That's not what they came for. That's not support. That's a performance. And you've been the audience. Let's stop talking about them for a second. Because the more interesting question isn't why they do this. It's why you keep showing up. You've felt the drain. You've had the conversation where you're nodding and saying, yeah, that's awful, while something inside you is quietly going numb. You noticed it. You just kept going. Why? Maybe you told yourself it's because you care. And that's true, partially. But caring doesn't explain why you feel guilty when you don't respond fast enough, or why setting a boundary with them feels like something you're doing wrong. That guilt isn't love. That's conditioning. You didn't decide to be this person. You were trained into it. Here's the part no one wants to say out loud. Chronic complaining is a dominance structure, not aggressive, not obvious, but real. When someone is always in crisis, always in need, always the one suffering, they control the emotional temperature of every interaction. They decide when things are heavy. They decide what gets attention. They decide what the conversation is about. You don't get to bring your problems. There's no space for that. Yours don't compare. Or worse, they manage to make your problems about themselves anyway. That's not a coincidence. That's a system, and you're inside it. Every relationship has an emotional center of gravity. With them, it's always theirs, and you've been orbiting it. There's a specific feeling you get after talking to them. Not refreshed, not connected, hollow, slightly irritated, a little guilty for feeling irritated. That combination, that specific emotional cocktail, is the signature of a dynamic where your energy is leaving and nothing is coming back. Attention is a resource. Emotional labor is a resource. And resources, when they only flow in one direction, run out. You've been running lower than you should be. And some part of you has been too polite or too afraid to say it. You didn't just give support. You gave access. Unlimited, uncharged access. Here's where it locks in. The more you help, the more they need you. The more they need you, the more special you feel. Useful, necessary, good. And when you try to pull back, they escalate. the problem gets worse, the crisis gets louder, the emotional weight gets heavier, and you come back. Because you're not just responding to them anymore. You're responding to the version of yourself that doesn't abandon people. The one who shows up. The one who helps. They're not manipulating you. They're not pulling you back. They're pulling the version of you that can't say no. That's the trap. It's not about them at all. It's about who you need to believe you are. There's a version of this you've already felt. A moment, maybe just for a second, where you thought, this is never going to change. Not cynically, just clearly, like a fact. And then you pushed it away, because accepting it means accepting something uncomfortable about the time you've already spent, about the energy, about the dynamic you've been participating in. But that thought wasn't pessimism. That was clarity. The clearest you've been about this in a long time. You're not a bad person for being tired. You're not cold for wanting something back. And they're not a monster, but they are someone whose relationship with suffering has become so familiar, so identity-defining, that leaving it would mean losing themselves. That's not your problem to fix. You can't want their peace more than they do. You've already tried. You already know this isn't going to change. The real question is, how much more of yourself are you willing to lose before you act?